Hi, Misha here. And this week I came to kind of a surprising realization. I was talking with a customer. They were trying to figure out a good modern 760 by 39 AK to buy. And after going through the arsenals and whatnot, I mentioned the Beryl-M762. And then I was going to send them a link over to a video. And I realized I've shown this gun, but every time I've done it, it's been in other videos comparing it with, say, the 5.56 Beryl, the Archer, or the WBP Jack or Fox. And I did do a preview video quite a long time ago, but I've never really just focused on this gun and its military service. So today, I want to correct that, because it's really worth featuring it, giving it the spotlight itself. And while I'll have to mention the WZ96C and 5.56 and compare a bit, I promise that I'll focus 90% on this version here. So this will probably be the history and specs and development video, and then we'll probably do a shorter one taking it back out to the range, because it's been a minute and it deserves to stretch its legs. But first, if you could, please do like, share, and subscribe. You know the drill. And if you'd like to help support us, there's a link to Patreon in the description below. Polish Beryl. Before we get into the history and development, quick tech specs. These are manufactured in Poland by FB-Radom, formerly the Circle 11 factory, and they're imported by Arms of America and converted by Atlantic. And this is almost how it comes in, although I've changed the furniture on mine, but it's pretty well stock. Starting here, we have a 16.5-inch cold hammer forged chrome lined barrel, threaded 14 by 1 left hand with a removable muzzle brake. It has the stud for a bayonet lug, but it's not cut out, but you can do it yourself if you prefer. It also has the lug here for the Tanto style bipod. Standard 90-degree gas block. Takes Tanto / Beryl style handguards. It comes with kind of your straight horizontal type. I put on this WZ96B pattern just because I had one extra. Standard iron sights. It also has cutouts and a notch in the back for the POPC rail system. It does have the enlarged safety and mag catch. It does accept standard magazines and drums, although the work is done here. And it accepts standard buttstocks and pistol grips, although this rail system does mean the rear stock maybe have to be modified just a little bit to fit because of the square back here. I put on the Beryl side folding stock. These come with a standard fixed plastic stock usually. The receiver is 1.0 millimeter stamped steel. Again, it's Polish. You have a forged front trunnion, forged bolt. It's as well made as a military gun. And while everyone thinks of the Beryl as being in 5.56 for military use, which in Poland it is, one reason, amongst just kind of being a cool gun to shoot, that I always wanted a Beryl-M762 by 39, these two have military service. Quite a bit, actually. Maybe not in huge numbers, but quite notable. These have been in use by the Nigerian Armed Forces, both Army and Air Force, since 2015. And they've actually seen extensive use because, well, Nigeria has had quite a bit of conflict and turmoil, terrorists and otherwise, for decades, and quite unfortunate that it doesn't seem like it's going to stop any day soon. So these have a true pedigree and history, which outside of just a really solid imported AK, I love me some history. So to put this in context, we're going to go back over 55 years to a time when Nigeria was a very young nation. Join me, won't you? After all, it's very cold outside, so what else do you have to do, right? BM-59.
That seemed to work better.
The Nigerian story begins actually quite soon after the nation was officially independent. Back in 1964, via an act of Parliament, the Defense Industries Corporation, DICON, or DICON, whichever you prefer, was established, although it would be a number of years before it was up and running. But here we have two examples, or at least facsimiles of what it would produce early on. And of all things, West Germany helped him set up, at least representatives of, including Fritz Werner. And in 1967 through 1970, Nigeria would experience a civil war. There would be a breakaway group, and during this time, they imported all their guns from pretty much anywhere they could. Britain, France, even the Soviet Union, because, the African thing. But one of the first contracts of note was with Beretta in Italy. In 1968 or 69, they ordered some BM-59s, which we've talked about many times on this channel. These were select fire 7.62 NATO, Beryl-M762, derivatives of the M1 Grand, among my favorite in the world. But by the time the rifles arrived, 1970, the Civil War was winding down. Nevertheless, they would acquire some from Italy, and then eventually licensed production would commence at DICON. And of course, that would include the quite famous BM-59 Mark IV, known as the Nigerian model. Very similar to this, except it had a slightly longer barrel, slightly heavier, and oftentimes had a pistol grip. Of course, the stock's interchangeable. We've talked about those in other videos, though. Next, though, would come the FAL. Now, Nigeria had imported some FALs, and for that matter, L1A1s, along with G3s, during 1967-1970 period. But in 1977, the government would negotiate with FN Herstal of Belgium to produce under license the FAL. Also, the high-power pistol and the MAG 58 general-purpose machine gun. But it would take a long time to get this up and running. In 1980, work would begin with representatives from FN to update the factory in Nigeria. And by 1983, they were assembling FALs like this. They would be later style with the Type 3 receivers. Of course, this is my Argentine gun. But they were still making it with Belgian parts for a time. But by 1987, they were able to start really producing everything domestically. And the following year, they kind of declared themselves able to get all the components domestically, steel and all that. No longer needing to import things from abroad, which was actually very important. Israeli FAL. While Nigeria definitely used BM-59s, there's not a ton of data out there about them. What I can say is their version of the FNFAL, known as the NR1, commonly expected to be the Nigerian Rifle number 1, was finally officially adopted in 1989, which means it could very well be the last full adoption of the FNFAL. Not the last use, of course, but by this point, most nations had moved on to 5.56 and other guns. But no, they were pretty much using 7.62 51, although it was kind of a substitute. They used plenty of guns in 5.56, including the FNC and some M16s that had made their way there. They were pretty much just using whatever they could, but no, the NR1, which again I'm using my Argentinian to represent here, was to be the standard produced domestically. But it just had gone into production and service when many events happened in the 1990s that kind of flipped it all on its head. SAR-1. Still works.
Good as new.
Yeah, practically. Probably looks about the same considering how these look new out of the box.
Pretty much.
And this is where the AK really comes in. Just for fun, I picked my SAR-1, but not the SAR-1 you've seen before. This is actually a different one that came in the store recently, although it's the same year. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. Sell it, keep it, whatever. But, of course, with the end of the Cold War, weapons were available on, if not the absolute black market, certainly different channels. The Soviet Union never really gave up, and that continued on with Russia and other nations like Romania and the former East Germany and Poland were still exporting guns. And on top of that, China became more interested in dealing with Nigeria at this time, although initial relations went all the way back to the early 70s. And you start to see quite a few 7.62 by 39 AKs popping up there. So even though 7.62 NATO was kind of the standard, beginning as early as 1990, 7.62 by 39 and 5.56 NATO kind of vied for the new standard in Nigeria. Heck, there's even a few reports, don't at me if I'm wrong, but that some 5.45 by 39 Tantals WZ-88s from Poland made their way down to Nigeria because Poland was kind of quickly jettisoning those. At any rate, the guns started to filter in. They were just so much cheaper than producing these. And a lot of the older BM-59s are starting to kind of get worn out. The AK started to become more and more a de facto standard there. And soldiers really seemed to like it. 7.62 by 39 in particular became a very popular cartridge compared to the rest. And then, well, in 1995, the nation received an embargo from both the European continent and North America. So the embargo made what was already a bad situation, or rather, situations, just that much worse. The Decon factory, or Dicon, I still don't know how you prefer, that's fine. Already suffered from, suffering its laborers, not treating them right, inefficiency. The military suffered from lack of oversight. It also suffered from very low funding. The government and the military and the factory all suffered from various levels of corruption. And of course, with the embargo, that went from kind of gray market purchases to outright black market. All around the same time, they're still fighting terrorist groups like BH and others. And lots of corruption was unveiled, bribery schemes, pocketing of funds. It was rough. So this is kind of the morass that Nigeria ends the 20th century in. Now, the embargo would end in 1999, but by this point, things like the NR1 were already on life support, and the decon factory was just barely hanging on. Well, in a few years, it would slowly but surely turn around. Maybe. By 2004, we have what is nominally a new democratically elected government, and there are efforts to bring workers back to the factory, actually paying wages, crazy things like that. And then in 2006, we have an interesting project. That's why this is here. The OBJ 006 was developed in under half a year. This was a Nigerian clone or copy of the AK. I can find very little about it. And while they claim it was put together under license, I'm not sure by who, when, or where. Russia or China. China was definitely making inroads at this time. So was Russia. They were both kind of vying for the market in Nigeria. So I don't know. Type 56s and even newer Russian guns like the AK-103 have appeared there over the years. Doesn't matter. By October of that year, the OBJ-006 was shown off to the higher-ups, including the president. In fact, the CEO, the chairman of Decon, showed it to the president. Some people say the gun was actually named after him. I'm sure there was no attempt to influence his decision-making right there at all. And the gun was going through factory trials and even some military trials, which concluded that November. And that was kind of it, at least for a very long time. So they would make it, develop it, but never really put it into production. And for a number of years, that's kind of where we're at. Nigeria still is purchasing what it can from abroad and using what it already has in inventory. That is up until about 2015, when the military budget is pretty greatly expanded, and this allows all kinds of new things. Now I'm going to give the Beryl, or the Archer, a go. Okay, after setting the stage, we can now talk about what is known in Nigeria as the FB-Beryl, or as it's known in Poland, the Beryl-M762. And of course, we have to talk about the original for just a minute. Known in the Polish military, the modern WZ-96C came out around 2009. And originally, FB had planned to make an export version, the Beryl-M556, an export version in 7.62x39, the Beryl-M762, and even considered an export version in 5.45x39 as the Beryl-M545. Well, as it happens, that version never really went anywhere. But after the definitive version was created, with the adjustable stock, quad rail, modern POPC rail, and even the current translucent mag and ergo grip extended, all that, they decided to turn their attention to the export market. And the first 7.62x39 variant prototype was shown off, I believe it was in London in 2009, but it was an early example. In 2013, they would create essentially a WZ-96C, but for the 7.62x39 caliber. And they would show it off in 2014 at MSPO 2014. And this was actually a pretty easy conversion because the whole Beryl line was kind of derived from the AKM. Poland had been making it since 1966. That evolved into the WZ-88 Tantle, even though it was in 5.45. So going back to 7.62 wasn't that difficult. So they first unveiled it in 2014, at which time Nigeria had already been expressing interest. In fact, by the end of the year, a contract would be signed for a series of kind of pre-production test models, and the first ones would be delivered to Nigeria in February 2015. Initially, 2 versions were offered to Nigeria. One of them had a standard AK-type selector, only on the right side, and the other had the more WZ-96/Tanto style with only a safe and fire on the right, and on the left a 3-way switch with single 3-round and auto. In the end, they decided to go with the 2-switch version. Another change happened with the barrels for the Beryl. The original version had an 18-inch barrel in 5.56, but the 762x39 version had a shorter barrel. Originally, it was to be 415 millimeters, so 16.25 inches, same as the standard AKM, but this was slightly extended out to 16.5 inches so that a bayonet would properly fit with the same radius between here, and also an underbarrel grenade launcher would fit properly. So you notice where the 1.5 inches are lost is between the gas block and the sight, here and here. Little difference there. Otherwise, the Nigerian Beryl would have the enlarged ejection port. It would have the enlarged safety, and probably most importantly, the enlarged mag catch. Speaking of magazines, I have this black painted steel one here for a reason. Now, FB in Poland had been making black polymer mags since the late 90s, and they had developed a translucent green mag like this for the 762x39, and they offered that to Nigeria. But for various reasons, probably to keep some commonality with their existing AKMs, they requested, or even demanded, that these come with the traditional steel ribbed AKM mags. So that's exactly what they got. Beryl-M762. That's one on that mag.
What ammo are you running?
I really don't know. Russian. Probably either Wolf or one of the Bears. The rifles that Nigeria received did not have this furniture. Since this is my gun, I've kind of set it up the way I like, with the older style folding stock and the mid-style foregrip arrangement. They actually shipped with the modern rail system with removable foregrip, like on this gun, and the modern 4-position adjustable stock. But I wanted to do something different. Now, there are pictures of this stock or the Tanto wire folder put on these, so at least some Nigerians wanted folding stocks. So, yeah, take it as you will. And it's kind of disputed as if they had the POP rail as standard. On paper, they came with it, but on the pictures we see, a lot of them are just iron sights only. Oh, and they usually have the ergo, the fatter pistol grip is on this gun here. But, again, I kind of like this Polish pistol grip. It is a little larger than your standard AKM anyway. So the common kit actually included 4 30-round steel mags and a mag pouch like this. If it was new, note that it's a Polish pouch, but no pocket for the bipod on the side. And they would come with one bayonet. This is a slightly older bayonet, but it's still a good representation. And I actually spent more time than I care to admit digging this particular one out to show you, so hey, be appreciative of what you get. Fun fact, the Polish bayonet, while very much like a standard AKM, they lack the serrated edge. And of course, since this is an imported semi-auto, the bayonet lug is not fully cut out. You can cut it out, but I just wanted to slide this on to show you that how the slightly longer barrel allows all this to line up just perfectly. Pretty neat. So I'm going to go for this gun. I don't believe these were given with bipods. I haven't run across any indication of that, although one could assume that it does have the two-piece cleaning rod in the mag pouch, because under the barrel there would not be one. So yeah, they received their first 1,000, and FB sent instructors down to Nigeria to help train and familiarize the troops. They would train some units of the regular infantry, also some special forces commandos. They would also send down some repair and maintenance kits with the guns, support gear. And after this familiarization period, they were primarily, although not exclusively, given to the 72nd Mobile Strike Command or Mobile Strike Brigade, essentially commandos that operated in the north of Nigeria, fighting ongoing extremist and terrorist insurgents like BH and the Islamic West African separatists. But we'll get to that in a bit. And initial response was quite positive, so much so that 500 more Beryl-M762s were ordered, and these were primarily received in June of that same year. Now I'll try the mini Beryl as a true pistol. I will say, thanks to the muzzle device and this ergonomic grip, as far as shooting as a true pistol, I've shot a lot worse.
Yep.
Bit of a side note. Nigeria was interested in doing a shorter version, so they received 10 mini Beryls as samples, as test models. Now these were 5.56. According to FB, they've never made a mini Beryl-M762 by 39. However, if Nigeria maybe had ordered them and wanted them, they could have. Or maybe because they were for special forces, they were planning on sticking with 5.56 because this was still one of the cartridges in use at the time, even today. But it doesn't seem like any more mini Beryls were ordered. Maybe that's why you see some of these end up with folding stocks to make them a more compact weapon as a compromise. But yeah, 10 were ordered. And from there, our third contract would actually not be with the Nigerian Army, but would be with the Nigerian Air Force, NAR. In 2017, they would receive 500 themselves of the standard 16.5-inch barreled Beryl. Also, the Defense Academy would order 500 training units known as Beryl ASG RRT. These were electric-powered pneumatic guns firing a little 6mm, essentially pellet or plastic BB, and good for training, so on and so forth. So by the end of the summer of 2017, Nigeria had at least 2,000 Beryls in service, and initially they planned to purchase up to 6,000 from Poland. But things would change. First and foremost, they would finally kind of officially adopt 7.62 by 39 as their standard issue cartridge, and they would begin setting up domestic production of the round, at least on mass quantity. This is where we kind of get into the whole Nigerian production of the Beryl. In March of 2018, more Beryls and Beryl training rifles were received by Nigeria. But the bigger news was that the Decon Corporation, again Defense Industries Corporation of Nigeria, signed a letter of intent to manufacture under license from FB-Radom the Beryl-M762. Now, this plan had been in works since at least 2016 and 2017, when the government started allocating finances and, the budget for such activities. Now the question is, are they going to build them? I don't know. Every article you read, even up to 2021 and even some in early 2022, there we go. I'm not repeating that because I'm tired. And it's very cold out for what it's worth. It's about -6 out right now. That's probably why I'm in here doing this and not shooting today. But anyway, it says they're planning on doing it, but I don't know if they have. Considering how long it took them to get the NR1 up and running, it wouldn't shock me if it's still in the future. Somewhat interestingly, though, in 2017, again in the budget, there was talk of money for, quote, AK-47, leading some to believe the OBJ-006 was kind of still on the table. And in fact, there's talk of an improved, modernized version of it coming out. So it seems like they're kind of hedging their bets and having two similar but different guns on the horizon. I guess we'll have to see. I should point out that while the Decon series is making firearms and stuff, that actually consists of 14 state-owned factories that are subordinate to the Army. The actual place where guns are made, the only place in Nigeria, is the Kaduna Ordnance Factories, which is either one or two factories depending on who you ask. They're the ones who actually make the guns. The other parts of the whole system make other things, and even vehicles. It's like a lot of things, kind of like Pakistan Ordnance Factories. But Nigeria is a relatively major market for sub-Saharan Africa, and they have ongoing troubles with terrorists. In fact, it's considered one of the worst nations in the world for terrorist activity, certainly for the region, which is just, tragic on a lot of levels, because no matter who's right in such a thing, it disrupts the lives of everyday citizens. That's probably why so many Nigerian princes are trying to get their wealth outside of the country, right? But yeah, SAR-1 kind of representing generic AKMs. Some that Nigeria purchased were new, some were used, and theoretically they might be making their own. But with the Beryl, they're getting a very modern but still very much AK platform, battle tested, and based on something that's seen combat in Iraq and Afghanistan and elsewhere. Alright, Beryl 762. Alrighty.
Ran a little better that time.
Yeah. The thing is, despite reforms and a presumably democratically chosen government, Nigeria has still been accused of human rights violations and international treaty violations, meaning that, well, it's not always in the best graces of the West. But this just means that China and Russia have continued to try to move in and gain, well, money and funding and whatnot in favor there. Of course, for Russia, this has dropped off in 2022 because, well, they don't really have a lot of leftover production capacity. In fact, pretty much all the guns and all the ammo made in Russia has been going to their not war in Ukraine. China, on the other hand, they were really close with Nigeria up until about 2014-2015, but then some disagreements popped up right around the same time that they started working with Poland. But while they might not be as warm as they once were, China is still the biggest exporter of military hardware to Nigeria. I'm not sure how much is in the line of small arms, but there's lots of missile systems, vehicles, even some aircraft. And I'm sure some Type 56s are going over, maybe even some newer Type 81s. I'm not sure. But it's projected that China will still be the biggest exporter to Nigeria for at least the next couple of years regardless. And obviously China is not too concerned with any human rights records there. And I'm not saying who's right or who's wrong. There are definitely still extremist groups, like I said, the Islamic West African region, province, whatever you prefer. There's still problems with that whole movement. BH is still doing their thing. And of course, there's just local corruption and all that too. There's definitely a lot going on in Nigeria. So, yeah, I don't know which way they're going to go. Could it be for more Chinese guns? Could it be for the OBJ-006? Or could it be for the FB Beryl-M762? The most recent number I could find for how many of these are in use there is 3,200, although that number is a couple of years old. I don't know if it's been expanded upon or not. It also seems clear that the NR1/FAL are still in use, and plenty of older Soviet and post-Soviet era AKMs and derivatives are in use as well. Plus there's a smattering of other guns, maybe some older G3s, Uzis, MP5s, even some Sterlings pop up there. Heck, some SIG 540s have even popped up there, or at least Manurhin variants of. There's even some M16A1s and M16A2s that are in service. Just because 7.62x39 was selected as the standard doesn't mean they don't use whatever they can get, because they're kind of in a position where they need all that they can. That said, the military is held in quite high regards, and serving in the Nigerian military, at least according to those in it, is quite a esteemed, a prestigious position, and they do seem to allow women in it, but I don't pretend to know. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I am not an expert on sub-Saharan Africa. I studied other things, but I did what I could to kind of bring light to this, because it just seems to be overlooked, the Beryl in this caliber and what's going on in Nigeria. And if nothing else, it is a very harsh proving ground. Look at South Africa, the use of the Galil, the R4, R5 down there. These guns are seeing true use, and not always in the best condition and environments, and they're holding up well. And even if they select a different one, it's probably not because the Beryls failed. It's probably because something else is more economically feasible for them. It does kind of make me laugh when these first came into America that there were rumors that they were made in Nigeria. I think that would be something special. And as I've said in black boxes and other things in years past, because of the way our import laws are written, the country of origin has to be very clearly stated. So to falsify that would be bad. Moreover, I know the people at Atlantic and Arms of America, these are coming from Poland. Like, that's the return on the boxes when they get them in. These are Polish. Now, we started to receive these after the last Nigerian contracts were over, so presumably they're making them with the same material and same specs as those, and they've proven to be high quality guns. I've sold the number. I've had mine here since they came out, and it's been a very fun gun. Now we'll let Fox try the Archer. as I promised at the beginning, we're not going to go too deep into the 5.56 Beryl or Archer, because it's kind of the whole point of this video. I wanted to give this gun its own. It needed its own video. I've used it in so many others as a comparison, but inadvertently, I think because it's just so solid, I never really focused on it by itself. My Archer has proven to be very accurate, very reliable, a little heavy because of all the gear on it, but it's been a great gun, and the tradition continues with these. And because Nigeria has made this an official military gun, it fits in my collection very well, and is a great representative of a modern 21st century AKM type gun. And in a lot of ways, it's superior to the old IOs. The way that Arms of America or Atlantic cuts out the magwell is better. And while some have complained about the paint and phosphate combo finish on these are military guns. Now, of course, these V3 Archers, which are only 150, maybe 200 guns, had the fake left side selector. Frankly, that was a mistake. It's not illegal, but it was never really meant to be. So it's really no surprise that these do not have it. The 5.56 versions don't either. But you can add it. It has the bump on the cover, and you could add it over here on the side. But you'd have to install the markings and detents. But that's, no wonder they don't have that. Also, the bayonet lug, as we've talked about, wasn't cut out. Same here. But it could be done. And one funny thing early on, the muzzle brakes, because they're actually made in the US, they put the ports on the wrong side on the top. The two side port strips are correct. But see, this one has the port on the right side. This one has it on the left. That was just a little oopsie that the subcontractor for Atlantic made. Luckily, this is on 14mm threads, which is one of the few changes done for the US market. Whereas the original Archer, like the military gun, this is actually pinned onto the barrel. This is screwed on, so I just need to unscrew it and put on. I do actually have the right brake, but these are Loctited on so that they time properly, because you don't have the front sight base right up against it. It's not a big enough deal that I've worried too much about it, but it is one early oopsie, which the newer guns have corrected. Some have also made a point about the markings changing and going to the laser style. Oh well, frankly, that's just kind of modern manufacturing. Take it or leave it. And like I said, I fully confess this isn't exactly correct for a Nigerian gun, because I put the kind of WZ-96B forearm grip and stock on. I even put the manual takedown lock versus the automatic in this one on. My gun, my choice. And that's the same reason I'm not rocking a top rail. It just makes it so heavy. And one thing I really do like about this configuration, even though it has a 16.5-inch barrel, so virtually the same as any other AKM, because the front sight's moved back, and because you have a pretty effective muzzle brake, same brake as the 5.56 on the military guns, it handles a little better. It whips around a little quicker. Less mass out front, more towards the center. Just means it feels really balanced in the hands, especially with this simple foregrip on it. And then you can fold the stock over and you get a reasonably compact gun. I'm just really pleased with this configuration, so that's probably how I'm going to keep it. But this one's good too for being more of a full rifle Polish military config. I like them both for different reasons. What do you think? Now we'll let Tanner shoot his first AK ever, the Beryl. And one more flip before we end things. You know, I've had this in the range bag ready to go several times to let Fox try, but it seems like every time something gets in the way, we need to fire something more. That's the problem. There's only so much time and so much space in the rig, so much ammo, and everything else, so much energy. And usually when I take a gun out shooting, there's a couple of reasons. One, it's new and I want to test it out. Or two, I'm having problems with it and want to work it out. Hence why that Beryl-M3 shotgun came out a couple of times. This gun's just reliable. It works. Aside from having a mag issue, which is, anything, the gun itself runs. So outside of just enjoyment of shooting it, I don't have a reason, which is kind of sad, but sometimes when you do this as kind of a half job thing, you have to kind of prioritize what needs to be shot over just what you want to shoot. But yeah, I think I will have to toss this and let Fox try it out. He shot the WBP, of course, and I want him to try this. And as you saw earlier, he has fired the 5.56 version and really enjoyed it, even more than the WBP and 5.56. So it'd actually be interesting to see if he prefers this or not. But this time, I just wanted to really dive into the history. Next time we'll get into more of the handling and shooting, more of a quicker, to the point video. But I had a lot of fun kind of digging up the history on the Nigerian contract and the activities, and I really am interested to see if the Kaduna factory, the Decon conglomerate, ends up building these or not. Hard to say. I like to see it, and I like to see how they did it. I'd love to have an NR1, or at least parts kits. But this seems like it's a sleeper gun. When the guns came back, the Beryls came back, everyone wanted the 5.56, and I get it. It's the Polish. It's interesting. Plenty of 7.62x39 guns on the market. But this is a bit of a sleeper. Nice quality. It does feed from standard AK mags. In fact, there are videos and pictures from Nigeria of soldiers running drums in these. They run drums just fine. You do get the enlarged controls, the slightly expanded port for better reliability, and you get the POP-C rail system, the over-the-top system, which I've always really liked. And you get a pretty understated, compact, but still quite effective muzzle brake. Either one. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how in the future people look to these, because while, yeah, the Archer came in 700 units or so, this is the very first time in the last year or two that we've had a 7.62x39 Beryl come into the country. And going forward, I don't know how many really have come in. Serial numbers are not that high, still very much in 3 digits, so I wouldn't be shocked if it's under 1,000. If it's over, probably not by a heck of a lot. And I love the fact that we have both. We pretty much have all the variants, all three made in numbers. No, we haven't received the Beryl-M545 because really FB-Radom never had any military orders for them. I'm sure if someone had ordered them, they would have. But because they didn't, they didn't. Beryl-762, last mag. Let's see about the fireballs. Yeah.
It's firebally. Yeah, the light's kind of dropping out on us, so yeah, we could see that one good.
Yep, so yeah, this has been running better. I think everything else was just what it was. Alrighty. Well, now I feel like I've given this gun its day. One thing to note, this folding stock fits on perfectly, but for it to fold over to the side completely, you need to have this safety in the up position. This little tab gets in the way a bit when it's all the way down. You can still fold it, but it doesn't go all the way. That's just because you're kind of blending WZ96B and 96C parts together. But to be fair, if you're folding the stock, it's for transport. Probably not a lot of military use. The fire was stock folded. Just thought I'd point that out. Alrighty guys, like I said, it's cold outside, but as soon as it warms up, we'll get to the range and I'll let Fox try this out. But for those who are into history, I hope this was kind of fun. It was a lot of fun to research. And I just kind of get off on that stuff. That's just me though. As always, if you could, please do like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to help support the channel in 2023, please check out the link to our Patreon page. This is Misha, and on behalf of Fox and Jero, we'll catch you very soon next time.